Vince Bond Jr., welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thank you for having me.
Going into these talks, a lot of people really saw Stellantis as probably the most contentious, the toughest one of the Detroit three, maybe the one that would have a strike that would go on the longest. You've got new ownership. Carlos Tavares is known to be a very tough negotiator. There were some harsh words, some tough social media commentary about Mark Stewart, and of course a lot of hurt feelings over the Belvedere plant in Illinois being idled. But here they were able to hammer out a deal. How'd they pull it off?
Well, just a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights, but I think the union came out pretty strong here with the return of the Belvedere plant that's being revived. That's going to be a huge source of jobs that were lost. And the thing about Belvedere is that back in February when it was idled, there were about 1,200 workers that were laid off. But over the previous years, that plant has had as many as 5,000 workers. And those people have been scattered across the country, out in New York and other places at different park centers and other facilities. And so that's a huge gain, especially with a new product, a new mid-size pickup that has been rumored for a long time. I've heard about it, but this is like really the first confirmation that it's on the way. So that's huge. And then, of course, the 25% raises. It's not quite the target they were going for, but I mean, that's pretty hefty in this era, especially with inflation. And then, of course, COLA. That's a big one that I've heard about on the picket line. That was probably one of the main top 2 or 3, things they wanted. And so they came out with that. And 6 weeks on the picket line, I think it was worth it.
Yeah, at least 6 weeks for Toledo and maybe, I guess, 5 weeks for the parts depots. But it started off really rough. And I mean, of course, the union was taking a strong position. Shawn Fain was taking maybe a bit of an extreme ask with all 3 automakers to try to get them to something, really sizable and historic, where they ended up. But the vitriol for Stellantis was maybe the worst, right? I mean, it's the one that that Shawn Fain threw in the trash on the live video.
Yes. And then at one point, Mark Stewart had a last minute press conference with us on a Saturday morning out of nowhere, and just saying that some of the things they've been saying is from the UAW has been misleading, and he thought he had to correct the record on some issues. And then, of course, they said they were outraged when Sterling Heights Assembly went down, and that plant builds the profitable Ram 1500. And so they've been going back and forth and trying to get a deal done, and they finally did it.
So Belvedere, you mentioned there's going to do battery production, and you talked about the mid-sized truck. Is that going to be an electric pickup?
Yes. So I spoke with the former Ram CEO at the New York Auto Show this year, and he was telling me that it could be electrified, and there's also an option for an ICE version. And so earlier in Vegas this year, I believe in March, they showed dealers a mid-size pickup concept that was an EV. But apparently there is some versatility there, and we may see, across the range, different powertrains, depending on the region that is offered.
So it could be electric, it could be hybrid, it could be regular ICE.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The union also looked like it kind of got a win at a couple other facilities. At least, early on, Stellantis identified a whole lot of properties that they maybe wanted the right to close or the opportunity to close if need be. Mentioned including the headquarters and the tech center, any place that had UAW folks they had to put on the list. But the union really said that Stellantis was going after the Trenton engine facility and the Toledo machining plant in Michigan and in Ohio, and that those would cost 5,000 jobs if they got closed. How big of a win was that for the UAW? How big of a concession for Stellantis?
Well, whenever you can save jobs, that's a huge win. That's why the union's here. And now Stellantis needs to figure out how they're going to balance the budget, with these plants still in operation. And so it's going to be a tough task right now. Carlos Tavares is trying to save money with EVs, and he was trying to find savings anywhere he could. But now these plants are still going to be here, so what's plan B? You have to figure out how you're going to make this work.
Sometimes I wonder, sort of like how the 40% raises and the 4-day work week and return of defined benefit pension, some of these extreme asks that are probably non-starters, but you put out there and say, hey, I really wish we could have this. And it's something you can give back to get a little something else. Maybe Stellantis said they wanted to close those facilities, but maybe also thought they might need them. And this was a way to have a little give and take. What are you hearing from those people? They must be super enthusiastic.
Yeah, just over the last month or so, I've been on the line at several parts centers. One of the huge things was tiers, and apparently those are on the way out in this deal. And of course, a couple years ago, maybe you didn't think that could happen, but here we go. And so, yeah, they're seeing some huge percentages as far as their gains at these parts centers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see in the long term because, a couple of contracts ago, they kind of said that they ended the tiers by saying there wasn't going to be a different high end, a different top end for new hires. But then the union's like, well, really, the temps are a separate tier and the parts depots are a separate tier and the grow-in period's a separate tier. So it'll be interesting if they feel like, well, there's still some inequities we want to address, when 2027 rolls around, 2028.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, there's still room for growth. So we'll see what happens next time.
So what's the sense on ratification? Of course, it's never guaranteed, but this did seem like a strong, a contract that satisfied a lot of the wishes. And of course, you've got these big voting blocks, presumably from Belvedere and the parts depots. Is this expected to get ratified easily?
So I've heard varying opinions on the picket line as far as what people want. One of the big ones was wages, the wage increase. I've seen some people say the 23% that was on the table last week was okay, and then of course Stellantis bumped it up to 25, and so I think those people they'll be fine with it. Of course, there are others who want it as much as $32 an hour. They'll have to make a concession. Okay, maybe I don't get this wage, but there is some more job security in there I can look at. So it's just so many different viewpoints on the picket line when you're out there. It's going to be interesting to see if they can all come together on this, but I expect it to pass. I think it's a pretty fair deal overall.
Do we know the timing of when the ratification votes are going to be, when they're going to release the highlights or have the tallies?
So last time I heard, I believe Thursday they're going to have a meeting among the top officials, and then we'll probably hear more after that.
So Thursday is when they meet to decide to approve and send it to the members for ratification. So it's going to be several days before the rest of us even see the details, probably.
Yeah. But of course, I mean, on social media, it'll probably leak out. So I will be patrolling Facebook and Twitter.
We'll be watching for whatever you find on the pages of Automotive News and the web pages of autonews.com. Thanks, Vince.
No problem. Thank you.